It's strange how quiet the countryside can be. When I moved into my new house in Evergreen Ridge, I thought that silence would feel peaceful. After 10 years in the city, I was craving stillness. No sirens, no traffic, no arguing neighbors through thin walls. Just wind, trees, and the faint hum of cicadas. My house was one of a dozen identical cottages, lined neatly around a narrow private road that curved through the woods. Each one had a porch light, a trimmed lawn, and curtains that were always drawn. I'd been here for a month, and I still hadn't met a single neighbor in person. At first, I assumed people kept to themselves. It was early autumn, and the nights were already getting cold. I worked remotely, so I rarely had a reason to go outside after dark. But sometimes, around midnight, I'd hear something. It started as faint echoes. Music, maybe. A soft, rhythmic thumping that drifted through the trees. I thought someone might be hosting a party in one of the houses farther down the road. But when I stepped outside, the night was empty. The sound seemed to shift, close one moment, far the next, as if the forest itself was breathing it in and out. The first night I noticed it, I stood on my porch for a long time, hugging my sweater. The wind smelled like pine and rain. The lights from the other cottages were off. I couldn't see a single figure, not even a passing car on the distant road. And yet the music pulsed on. A low, steady beat, muffled like it was coming through walls or through water. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone playing a speaker too loud inside, maybe the acoustics of the valley twisting the sound. I went back inside and shut the door, trying to convince myself it was normal. But later that night, when I got up to drink some water, I saw something through the kitchen window. At the far end of the lane, one of the houses had its windows lit up, flickering with warm orange light, like candles or a fire. Shadows were moving across the walls. I could almost make out silhouettes, people talking, laughing, dancing. For a second, I smiled. Maybe the neighbors were just finally enjoying themselves. But when I leaned closer to the glass, my smile froze. The light was flickering, yes, but the windows were boarded shut. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those shadows moving behind the boards, distorted shapes shifting against a warm orange glow. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. The sunlight always has a way of washing away fear, doesn't it? Still, when I went for my morning walk, I made sure to pass that house. It looked abandoned. The lawn was overgrown, a mailbox hung open, and the windows were indeed boarded up, thick wooden planks nailed across each frame. The boards were weathered and gray, like they'd been there for years. No sign of candles, no movement, nothing. But there was something that made my stomach twist. In the dirt near the front steps, there were fresh footprints. Not one pair, several. They led from the side of the house to the back, where I couldn't see without trespassing. I told myself it wasn't my business. People sometimes fix up old houses, right? Maybe they had workers coming at night for some reason. Still, the thought wouldn't leave me alone. That night, the music came back. Only this time, it was louder. I could hear laughter now, soft, distorted, like a recording played through an old radio. The sound moved through the trees again, pulsing faintly. I turned off the lights in my living room and stood by the window, watching. The same house at the end of the lane was glowing again. The flickering was faster, sharper. And though the boards were still there, I could swear I saw figures pressed against them from inside, like silhouettes trying to get out. My heart was racing. I grabbed my phone and started recording a short video through the window. The camera struggled with the darkness, but the light, orange, trembling, was unmistakable. Then something odd happened. When I replayed the video seconds later, the house was pitch black. No lights, no shadows. Just an empty, dark shape against the trees. And when I looked up from my phone, the glow had vanished. I don't know how long I stood there, waiting for it to come back. The wind rustled through the leaves, and everything went silent again. But before I went to bed, I noticed something strange near my porch steps. A faint trail of mud, footprints, small ones leading up toward my door. And on the lowest step, a red plastic cup, half crushed, smeared with dirt. The kind you'd see at a party. I didn't touch the cup. I don't even know why, I just couldn't. Something about it made me uneasy, like it was meant to be there, waiting for me to find it. I stared at it for a long time before finally using a stick to nudge it off the porch. It rolled a few feet into the grass, leaving a faint smear of mud behind. The next morning, it was gone. That shouldn't have bothered me as much as it did, but the idea that someone came back onto my porch to take it made my stomach tighten. Maybe it was a prank, I thought. Maybe one of the neighbors' teenagers was trying to freak out the new lady who lived alone. I wanted to believe that. But that evening, the party started again. It was exactly 2:13 a.m. when I woke up. I know because I checked the clock on my nightstand. The same muffled music was pulsing faintly through the walls, the same distant echo of voices and laughter drifting through the night. I got out of bed and went to the window. The light was back. That same orange flicker coming from the boarded-up house down the road. Only this time, it wasn't just the glow. I could see shadows. People moving behind the cracks in the wood, swaying slowly like they were dancing. And I swear, for just a second, I heard someone say my name. It wasn't shouted, it was whispered, like someone leaning close to my ear. I froze, staring out through the dark. "You're tired," I told myself. "It's the wind. It's just the wind." I grabbed my phone again, opened the camera, and started recording. I zoomed in on the house, trying to catch any sign of movement. And then something blinked across the frame. A face. Just for a split second, pale and colorless, pressed against one of the boards before vanishing again. I stopped recording immediately. My breathing was shallow, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I didn't even replay it this time. I didn't want to see what I'd caught. Instead, I sat down on the couch with every light in the living room turned on, waiting for the morning. When the sun finally rose, I forced myself to go outside. Everything looked normal. The house in the distance was lifeless again. No signs of lights, no figures, no sound. The world was quiet and ordinary. I walked to the end of my driveway, trying to shake off the feeling. That's when I saw something lying in the grass near the curb. Another cup. But this one wasn't red. It was white, made of heavy paper, like the kind you'd get at a coffee shop. And drawn across it in thick black marker was a small, smiley face. Just 2 dots and a curved line, childlike and uneven. Underneath it, someone had written, "You looked right at us." I felt something tighten in my throat. I looked around quickly, scanning the trees, the yards, the empty road. Everything was still. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding so hard it made my vision pulse. The cup was light enough to blow away in the wind, but it stayed exactly where it was, upright, as if someone had just placed it there. That night, I didn't sleep in my bedroom. I dragged a blanket to the downstairs hallway, away from the windows. I told myself that in the morning, I'd drive to the nearest motel and call someone, anyone, to look into that house. But when morning came, I changed my mind. I don't know why. Maybe because it all seemed too strange to explain. Maybe because I didn't want to sound insane. And so I stayed. Later that afternoon, I looked out toward the end of the street again. For the first time, the front door of that house was open. Just barely, swinging gently in the wind. I tried to convince myself that the door had always been like that. Maybe a storm had blown it open. Maybe it wasn't even open at all. Maybe my eyes were just playing tricks in the light. But the longer I watched, the more certain I became. It was moving. The dark slit of the doorway seemed to breathe, the boards around it shifting slightly, as though the house itself were exhaling. I don't remember making the decision to walk down there. It was as if something inside me was pulling forward, while the rest of me screamed to stay put. I kept telling myself that if I just checked, if I just saw it up close, I could stop being afraid. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I walked down the narrow road. The air was cold, unnaturally still. Not even the insects were making noise. The boarded windows of the old house loomed closer, every one of them sealed except the one where I'd seen the light. The door was indeed open, about 6 inches, just wide enough for darkness to seep through. I reached out and pushed it gently. It groaned on its hinges, the sound echoing through what felt like an enormous hollow space. I waited for the smell I expected, dust, rot, mold, but there was nothing, just air, empty and cold. I turned on my phone's flashlight and stepped inside. The beam cut through floating dust motes. Furniture was still there, tables, chairs, all of it draped in faded sheets. Cups lined up neatly on a counter. Red ones, white ones, clear plastic ones, some stacked, some scattered. And in the middle of the room, a banner. It was half torn, hanging from the ceiling by one corner. The letters were barely visible, faded and peeling, but I could still read them. "Welcome back, class of 2013. A reunion. That's what this had been, a party that never ended. I heard a faint sound behind me. Not a footstep, more like fabric brushing against wood. My light flicked toward it, landing on a figure standing in the doorway. I froze. It was a woman, or something shaped like one. Her head tilted slightly, hair hanging over her face. She wasn't moving toward me, just standing there, watching. My heart thudded in my ears. "Hello," I whispered. No response. But she tilted her head further, like a bird listening to a distant sound. Then, in a soft rasp of a voice that didn't sound like it had been used in years, she said, "You came back late." I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over one of the covered chairs. I don't know what you mean," I stammered, my flashlight shaking. Her head snapped up suddenly and I saw her face, or what was left of it. Her skin looked bleached, her eyes hollow and colorless, her lips stretched into a faint, unnatural smile. But what chilled me most was the red smear across her cheek. It wasn't blood. It looked like paint, like the kind on the cups. "Don't you remember?" she whispered. Something moved behind her then, more figures, stepping into the dim light. All of them silent, faces pale and blurred like photographs left in the rain. Some wore party hats. One held a half-empty bottle. Another carried a balloon so deflated it barely floated. And they were all smiling. I turned and ran. I didn't even think. The flashlight beam swung wildly, catching flashes of broken walls, stairs leading nowhere, a cracked mirror reflecting shapes that weren't mine. I stumbled through the open door, gasping as I hit the cold night air. When I looked back, the door was closed again, completely shut. I didn't stop running until I reached my house. I locked every door, every window, and sat shaking on the floor, trying to convince myself it hadn't happened. But later, when I finally gathered the courage to look out the window, just once I saw them. Dozens of faint silhouettes standing along the edge of the road, facing my house. Motionless, silent, holding their cups. Every one of them raised their hand at the same time, and waved. I didn't sleep that night. Every few minutes, I'd peek through the curtains, half expecting to see them still there, those silent guests in the dark. But the road was empty. No shapes, no lights, just the sound of the wind scraping through the pines. At sunrise, I almost convinced myself it had all been stress, exhaustion, imagination. But then I saw them. Footprints. Hundreds of them, pressed deep into the damp ground outside my porch. They circled the house, overlapping in strange, chaotic spirals, as though the group had been walking around it again and again, waiting. I tried calling the local sheriff's office. No one answered. The line kept ringing, the same hollow tone repeating until it cut off. When I tried again later, it said the number was disconnected. By noon, I decided I couldn't stay there another night. I packed a bag, stuffed my phone charger inside, and went out to the car. My keys slipped in my shaking hands. The moment I turned the ignition, the engine coughed and died. The dashboard lights flickered once and went dark. I tried again. Nothing. That's when I noticed the rear-view mirror. There was a red cup sitting on the hood of my car. I don't remember screaming, but I must have because my throat hurt afterward. I backed away, stumbled up the porch steps, and locked myself inside again. The hours passed in a blur. I kept checking my phone, but there was no signal, no Wi-Fi, nothing but static when I tried the radio. It was around 3 p.m. when I realized the static wasn't random. There were voices inside it. I held the phone to my ear, straining to catch the words. They were faint, layered, like 1,000 people whispering at once. But beneath the noise, one voice rose clearly, a woman's, soft and familiar. "Come back," it said. "Come back to the party." I threw the phone across the room. It landed with a dull thud against the couch. When the sun started to go down, I heard music again. It was faint at first, drifting through the trees like fog. The same tune as before, a slow, echoing hum, something that sounded like an old pop song distorted through broken speakers. I walked to the window, terrified but unable to look away. The house at the end of the lane was glowing again. Not just from one window this time, but every window. The light shimmered orange and red, pulsing in time with the music. And then I saw movement. A long line of people, figures, walking up the road toward it. Some of them were holding lanterns, others cups, others nothing at all. Their heads tilted as if listening to something only they could hear. And among them, I saw faces I recognized. The old couple who used to live across the street, the man who ran the hardware store, even the sheriff. They were all walking toward that house. One by one, they stepped through the open door and disappeared inside. The glow brightened, almost blinding. The sound grew louder, vibrating through the air, through my walls, through my bones. I covered my ears, but the music was inside me now. I could feel it in my heartbeat. Then, without realizing I'd moved, I was standing outside. The night air hit my skin like ice. The road stretched before me and the house was waiting, its open door shining like the mouth of a furnace. Something called to me, not in words but in memory. For a moment I saw flashes, images that weren't mine. Laughter, sparkling lights. A dance floor, my own hands holding a red cup, and a voice whispering, "Don't be late again." I took one step forward, then another. The music grew clearer, crisper, more joyful somehow. By the time I reached the end of the lane, the air smelled sweet, like perfume, smoke, and something metallic beneath it. I stopped at the porch. The door stood wide open, the light spilling onto the ground like liquid fire. Inside, the music stopped. Silence fell so completely that my ears rang. I waited, breathing hard, heart pounding. And then, from somewhere deep inside the house, came a sound that didn't belong to any human throat, long, slow, like a sigh drawn out too far. And then a single word, whispered so close it felt like it came from just behind me. "Welcome back." When I stepped inside, the light vanished behind me. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air turned heavy, pressing against my chest like water. The door creaked shut on its own, sealing the silence around me. I tried turning on my phone's flashlight, but the screen flickered and died. I was swallowed by darkness so complete it felt alive, breathing against my skin, whispering through my hair. Then the music started again. Not the cheerful, distant tune I'd heard before. This was slower, distorted, like a record being dragged by hand. The melody bent in unnatural ways, each note trembling and sinking deeper until it became a hum that pulsed inside my ribs. There were candles burning somewhere deeper in the house. I followed the faint glow down a narrow hallway, my footsteps muffled by old carpet. The walls were lined with framed photos, but when I raised my hand to one, the glass was warm. I leaned closer. The photo showed a group of people laughing under string lights, red cups in hand, the same cups from the porch and the road. I recognized the living room behind them, this very house. At first, I thought they were strangers. Then I saw her, the woman who'd spoken to me the night before, standing in the middle of the group, and next to her, someone with the same hair, the same face, only younger, me. My knees nearly gave out. I stared at the photo, shaking my head. I didn't remember ever being here. I didn't know these people. And yet the image was as real as my reflection. Behind me, the hallway groaned. The air filled with the faint sound of laughter, then footsteps, soft, synchronized, like a crowd approaching from every direction. I turned and saw the faint outlines of people stepping out from the shadows. Dozens of them, their faces flickering like candlelight. Some wore the same clothes from the picture. Others looked burned, frayed, wrong, like they'd been stuck halfway between one world and another. The woman from before stepped forward. Her smile was too wide now, her eyes too bright. "We've been waiting," she said gently. "You promised you'd come back." "I never," my voice broke. "I don't know you." Her expression softened. She tilted her head, almost pitying. "You don't remember the fire, do you?" My heart stopped. I shook my head, but she went on. "It was the reunion, the one you planned. You said we should make it a night to remember." She looked around as if admiring the ruin. "You were right." My throat closed. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." I wasn't. But then I remembered the smell from earlier. The metallic sweetness. Smoke. Perfume. And a flash, people screaming, glass breaking, the sound of wood splitting open, and the world turning into a wave of orange light. I stumbled backward, the memory slamming into me like cold air. "No," I said again, louder this time. "I left, I moved here, I bought a house." "You came back," she said simply, taking another step closer. "You never left. You just forgot." Something moved behind her, shapes twisting in the light. The others were joining hands now, forming a loose circle. The music changed again, swelling, filling the air like it was bleeding through the walls. The candles burned brighter. The shadows danced. I felt my body growing heavy, my legs numb, my breath shallow. The woman reached out and placed a hand on my cheek, her touch freezing. "It's all right," she whispered. "You belong here." I tried to pull away, but the house itself seemed to hold me. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet like they were breathing. The walls shuddered, and somewhere upstairs, I heard doors slamming one by one. Then she leaned close enough for me to smell the smoke in her hair. "The fire took us all," she murmured. "It burned everything but the music." Her eyes flicked toward the far wall, where a faint orange glow began to spread. Flames flickered up from the cracks, slow and deliberate, climbing like fingers. And in their light, I saw dozens of faces staring back at me, frozen in mid-laughter, burned into the wallpaper. The circle of guests began to hum in unison. The floorboards rattled, cups fell from invisible hands and rolled toward me, clinking softly. "Stay," she said. "Just one more song." I turned and ran. The air grew hotter with every step. The walls seemed to close in, melting at the edges. I reached the front door and pulled, but it wouldn't open. My hands slipped on the knob. The wood beneath it was warm. The humming grew louder, deeper, until it wasn't music anymore but a pulse, steady and alive. And then, above it all, the woman's voice again, soft but inescapable. "You never left the party, darling. You just forgot how it ended." The door finally gave way. I stumbled outside into the cold night air, falling onto the dirt road. The music cut off. When I looked back, the house was dark again. No flames, no light, just silence. But as I stood up, I realized I was still holding something in my hand. A red plastic cup, and inside it ashes. By morning, the house was gone. Only an empty lot remained, charred ground where the boards had stood, and a faint smell of smoke that clung to the air like memory. The sheriff's office finally answered my call. They said there had never been a house there, not in 20 years. "It burned down during a class reunion," the deputy told me. "No survivors." That night, as I packed to leave, I found something under my window, a neat line of red cups, each filled halfway with ash. And in the distance, faint and broken, came the echo of that same melody. Slow, distorted, calling me home. I closed the curtains, but the reflection in the glass didn't move with me. She stood there, smiling faintly, raising her cup in a silent toast. The music swelled once more, and this time I didn't cover my ears.